Good morning, Year 8. Thank you for engaging with these lessons again. Could you please send me a message on Show My Homework to show that you're accessing the lesson, and then I can mark you off on the register, and that would be fantastic. Today's lesson is going to be assessed via a My Maths activity, Simplifying 1. I've popped the name of the activity just here so that I know a couple of people have been having some trouble with their My Maths homework feed, because I think My Maths is quite overloaded. So if this doesn't show up in your homework activities, then you can search it straight away there and get onto the activity. Again, please get in touch with me at red@theroyal.school if you do need any assistance, and then we can submit work just via Show My Homework to keep that separate. If you are sending me pictures of the work, that's fantastic. I think a couple of people have been sending my PowerPoints back to me to show that they're accessing the lesson. There's no need to do that. You can just send a quick short text message there, just saying hi, or this is me registering or something similar, and I can check you off there. But I have been really appreciating those people that have been sending in pictures of their work. That's been absolutely fantastic to see, and I'll be able to send some corrections or give out some praise where necessary. So that's a fantastic thing to be able to do. So today's lesson, Simplifying and Substituting, is looking at a little bit of the basics of algebra. So developing students today will be able to use algebra notation. Secure students will be able to do a bit of substitution. And then excelling students will be able to collect like terms and simplify algebraic expressions. And we'll cover those words and the meaning of those as we go through the lesson today. Thank you. Right, onto some algebra basics then. In algebra, a letter stands for a missing number, and we may or may not find out what that missing number is. In the case of today's lesson, we won't. If you find out what the missing number is, you'd be having a look at an algebra equation, and that's going to be coming up later on in the topic. Now, in algebra, it is usual to abbreviate, that means to shorten things, by leaving out the multiplication and division signs. That actually makes writing algebra quite straightforward, and a bit lazy by missing out those times and divide signs. Now, it has to be done in a certain way though. If we had q times 4, then that would be written as 4q. We've missed out the multiplication sign, but it's really important that when multiplying a letter and a number, that the number is always placed first. So q times 4 must be written the other way around as 4q, so that the number is first. If we've got x times y, those are two separate letters, so we can just miss out the multiplication sign there and write them as xy. You'll quite often see as well that letters will be put into alphabetical order. So if I had b times a, we'd probably write it as AB, so that we've got those letters in alphabetical order. BA would not be wrong, but if you write things alphabetically, it keeps things straightforward and always in the same sort of written way, so that if we get onto more complicated questions, you can keep track of where we are. Now, when we get onto division, this should be really straightforward, because you've seen in previous topics that dividing is just the same as having a fraction. So if you've got 8 divided by t, which I'll highlight in green here, then we're starting off with 8, we're dividing it by t, so 8 would go as the numerator of the fraction, and t would go as the denominator of a fraction. Likewise, if you've got a divided by b below, we're starting off with a and we're dividing it by b, so a would be our numerator and b would be our denominator. So we can rewrite these multiplications and divisions as either a sequence of letters and numbers, or as this fraction way if it's a divide. So I've got 12 questions there for you to have a look at, and I'd like you to try and write down the answers to these. There's a couple of tricky ones near the end that I'll run through as well. So write down the answers to those, pause the video until you're ready to go through the answers. So answers to these then. Majority of these should be straightforward, as long as you're keeping the letters after the numbers in your multiplications and putting your first number or letter as a numerator in your fractions. Ones to watch out though are going to be 9, 10 and 12. So 9, we have a times a. You should remember that if you have anything times by itself, then it is a square number, so we can actually write that squared as well with the letters. So that's a different way of writing those. If you write a, then you aren't strictly speaking incorrect, but we could have that a squared as a better answer. Number 10, remember, if you have anything divided by itself, then the answer is 1, so that could be just written as a 1 to simplify your fraction there. And likewise, this is one that a lot of people forget. If you have 1 times a letter, or just one of those letters in algebra, you don't write the 1 either. That's another little quirk in algebra. So 1 times the letter D is just written as D. You've got 1 of them there. We'd only have numbers if you had 2 or more of them. Right, this leads us into substitution. So if we know what these algebra terms mean, we can actually start to substitute in letters for numbers if we're told what they are. Now, this is essentially just a BIDMAS activity, so this links us back to one of our previous topics of BIDMAS and doing the sums in the correct order. So I'll do the first couple of these and I'll leave you to have a look at the rest. So our first question here, we've got A plus B. And we are told in the first row that A is 2, B is 4, and C is 1. So we don't have a C in this expression here. So wherever I see an A, I'm going to replace it with a 2. And wherever I see a B, I'm going to replace it with a 4. So A plus B becomes 2 plus 4. And therefore we get the final answer of 6 to go in this box. Excuse my mouse handwriting. If I skip to one of the ones with a multiplication, and then we've got over here 2A, and we saw earlier that a number in front of these letters means to multiply. So this means 2 times whatever A is. So I'm going to write 2 times, and we saw earlier that A over here is worth 2. So this is 2 times 2, so my answer is 4. And as long as you're sticking to BIDMAS, then they should be really, really straightforward. Just remember, when you have a square number over here, as we mentioned before, that's a number times by itself, not times by 2. So that can be a little bit confusing for some people. It's a real common mistake that people just double a number rather than times it by itself. So I'd give yourselves a few minutes to have a look at these questions then. And again, once you're ready for the answers, then you can unpause the video. So answers coming to these questions as follows. And if you've had any problems with those, then please pop in touch with me at red@theroyal.school. Then I'll be able to give you any assistance that you might need with these substitution questions. Now, we're going to now look at simplifying some algebra expressions. So we're going to move away from knowing what those letters are worth. Then we're going to try and write our expressions, which is our jumble of algebra letters and numbers. We're going to try and write those in a more simple form. This is really handy because we might end up in a business, for example, with lots of unknown values. And you might be able to start to do some calculations with them, i.e. simplifying them, so that when you do find the correct numbers, your sums are actually quite easy to do and things aren't in so much of a jumble. So we need to have a look at how to simplify, and we need to identify there whether we have like or unlike terms. So we've got some other terms here and some other words that we might need to use. So the definition of this is that when the terms of an algebra expression, that would mean our jumble of algebra letters and numbers, either do not differ, that is the same, or differ only in their coefficients. Now, coefficients is a really important term because coefficients means the number in front of an algebra expression. So if we'd got A, then there's just one letter A there, we'd say that the coefficient is 1. If we'd got 6 B's, then we'd say that the coefficient of B is 6. If I'd got 5A squared, then we'd say that the coefficient of A squared is 5, and so on. It just means the number in front of a posh way of saying that. So if our algebra letters are the same, or they differ only in the number that's in front of them, they're called like terms. Otherwise, they're called unlike. So here we've got 4A plus 6A. What we can see here is both of these have an A term in them, and they only differ by that number in front of the A. That means that they only differ by the coefficient. This means we can add them together. So 4A's plus 6A's, we can add them together. If we got 7D's minus 5D's, again, let's have a look. They've both got the letter D in them. So these are like terms. That means we could actually take away the amount of D's that we have from one another and get a final answer. Here I've got 8x plus 4x minus 6x, and again you can see that they each have an x term in. They only differ by that term in front of them, so these are called like terms, so we can mix those together. Now you've got to be really careful at the high end of this. So here we've got 5m squared minus 2m squared. So we have a look, both of these terms have m squared in them, so we can collect those and treat them as like terms. If there was 5m squared, subtract 2 m's, we'd have to treat those as unlike terms. The letters have to have those same powers next to them in order to be able to treat them as like terms. So 8r cubed minus 3r cubed, yeah, we've got r cubed in the first one, r cubed in the second one. Remember there's a hidden 1 in front of r cubed, we've got 1 of it, but we don't write the 1 in algebra, so yet those are like terms again. So these expressions with like terms can be reduced and simplified down to a single term. That means a single expression with a number and a letter in. So our 4a plus 6a would become 10a. Let me just get rid of my highlighting there, apologies. So we know that 4 plus 6 is 10. So if all of our letters or all of our terms have an a after them, we can say we've got 10 a's. Like 4 apples plus 6 apples would equal 10 apples. With the next one then, if we had 7d minus 5d, we can take away, and 7 perhaps dominoes minus 5 dominoes would leave us with 2 dominoes. If we've got there 8x's plus 4x's and minus 6x's, well, let's do this just in order. 8x's plus 4x's would give us 12x's, and then take away 6x's from that would leave us with 6x's. So essentially it's just general basic arithmetic, but we're just going to leave those letters behind the correct terms. 5m squared minus 2m squared, well, 5 minus 2 is 3, so we get 3m squared. And finally 8r cubed minus 1r cubed, remember there's a 1 in front of that that's hidden. 8 minus 1 is 7, so 8r cubed minus 1r cubed is 7r cubed. This should be hopefully very straightforward. Just watch out for the letters after each number, and the letters have to be the same, or the same mix of letters, or the same power of letters for us to be able to simplify those terms. So here I've got several expressions for you, and I'd like you to match them on the right hand side with the correct one. So one of the answers is going to be missing as an extension. What should it be? So you may wish, if you've not got access to a printer here, you may to just write them out and then write out the answers next to them. I'm going to be drawing some lines in a moment to find the correct ones. So pause the video again until you're ready to continue. And answers as follows. So 3a's plus 5a's gives us 8a's. This is the missing one then. 3a's take away 5a's. Remember, 3 take away 5 would be negative 2. So this is negative 2a for this one. 5a's minus 3a's is 2a's. 3a's plus 2a's plus 4a's gives us 9a's. 6a's plus 2a's minus 3a's is 5a's. 7a's minus 4a's minus 2a's is just 1a, so just write a on its own. And a difficult one at the end here. Some of us may prefer to work in decimals for this one. Remember, half a would be the same as 0.5a, and 5 divided by 2 gives us 2.5. So 0.5 plus 2.5 would give us 3. So 0.5a's plus 2.5a's would give us 3a's for the final one. Now, when 2 or more like terms are added together, we've seen that they can be collected and the result expressed in a single term. So we've got single letters with numbers in front of them as our answers here. But the terms might not always be the same in these algebra expressions. So those cannot be mixed. But you can collect the terms that are the same. This is probably more difficult to read here in the written example than it is to actually try a question on it. So we'll have a look at some questions for it. So here we've got 8x plus 7y minus 3y plus 9x. So what we're talking about here is the fact that we've got some x's in this question and we've got some y's in the question. It's really useful in these types of questions to actually do a little bit of highlighting like I have, or circle them so we know which letter's which. So what we're saying here is that we can mix together the x part of these expressions, but we can't mix the x's and y's together. So we're going to need to do them as two separate parts of a calculation. So this is where some people get a little bit confused because they think that their answer must just have x's or must just have y's in it. We can actually have a little bit more complicated answer in this case. So I'm going to start off by highlighting my x terms, 8x plus 9x. It's really important when you're highlighting or identifying these terms to also take the symbol that's in front of them, otherwise we might get confused with what we need to do with this. So if I circle the x terms 8x and the plus 9x, I can now put those together and do 8x's plus 9x's, and that's going to be part of my answer, 17x. And also now I need to do the same with my y's, so I'm going to highlight those in a different colour. So I have positive 7y, that just means I'm starting off with a normal 7y, and then a minus 3y. So 7y's take away 3y's is going to give us 4y's. And this would be our final answer. We've done as much as we can with the x's for 17x. We've done as much as we can with the y's, and we've got 4y's or positive 4y's, hence the plus there. And then we are done with that question. We can have a much more complicated looking at sum like this, but it's really straightforward as long as you just take it in this methodical way. So here I've got 5a's, 8b's, 9c's, 2a's, another b, and a c with various pluses and minuses in front of them. So take it in this methodical way. I'm going to start off alphabetically here. So let's circle or highlight the a terms. I've got a 5a. Remember to take the symbol in front of any letters if you can. And so we're going to have now a plus 2a is the next time we see a's. 5a plus 2a is going to give us 7a's. Let's do the same to the b's here. So we've got a positive 8b to start off with, so starting off at the positive side of the number line. And the next time we see b's, we are taking away one of them. Remember the hidden one there. So if I had positive 8b's and take away one from that, I'm going to have positive 7b's. And then finally, we can see that they're not highlighted here, so that's all we're remaining with, but I'm still going to highlight these letters just for effect. So we've now got our C terms. This is where we need to be really careful with the symbols in front of. I now have a minus 9C and a positive 3C. Now, if you think about your number line, if you start off at minus 9 and then move your way upwards by 3 for the plus 3C's, you're still going to be in the negatives. There's no way we can get past 0 here into the positives. So minus 9C plus 3C is going to be minus 6C. So we need the negative sign in there to get the correct answer. And that's collecting our like terms when we've got some unlike letters in there as well. So really straightforward as long as you're highlighting, and when you start to get confident with it, you might be able to leave the highlighter away from the questions and just make sure you're checking them off. I would still do this with some more complicated questions myself. Cross off the terms when you've done them. So when you've got your 7a, cross off the a's, and that way you won't leave one of the letters in a more complicated sum. So I've got 8 questions very quickly for you to have a look at here, and I'd like you to simplify them where possible, but some of them you can't simplify, so you might need to say cannot be simplified or can't be done for some of these questions as well. So I'll leave you with those for just a moment and then unpause the video when you are ready. So answers to these then as follows. So if I run through these very quickly, we've got the answers up anyway. In the first one, we've got 2 letters that both are A, so you can mix those together, and one that's a B, so leave it separate. Here we've got X's and Y's together, so we can mix those. Number 3, S's and T's. So actually we've got here an S and then minus an S, so you end up with 0 S's, and you don't need to write 0 S there, we can just leave them out of the answer, so it's just 3T. Number 4, 8k minus 3, well, we've got some algebra terms with the k in and some normal numbers here, just a 3, so we can't mix those, they're not like terms. Number 5, we've got d's and e's, so the d's can be mixed together. Let's get 2 d's. The e's, there's no others, but we still have the 2 here, so they have to be part of our answer. And then the regular numbers can be mixed as we would normally deal with numbers. 4 and 3 gives us the 7. In number 6 is where we need to be really careful with the more complicated ones. Our letters are actually X and Y here, so we can mix them together with other terms that have an X and a Y in them. That's absolutely fine. So we can say we've got 4 plus 2 minus 3. We've got our 3 XYs, keep the terms the same. But in number 7, we have C, D as our letters here, and C, E as our letters here. It's not the same combination of letters, so you can't mix those. And in number 8, we've got terms with an M. We can mix them together to get 8 M's. We've got one term with an N, minus 2, so that has to be minus 2N in the answer. And then we've got one term with an M, N. It's a different combination of letters, so it has to remain on its own at the end as well. So you can mix together like terms, that's the same letters or the same combination of letters. And those that are not like, you might need to include in your answer as well, but they can't be mixed with the other types of letter. So thank you for engaging with this online lesson, and if you've not yet sent me a message on Show My Homework to say that you're accessing the lesson, then please do so. You will need now to get yourselves onto My Maths, so please let me know if you're struggling with the login. And it's the simplifying 1 activity. And then if you've got any problems, then please let me know at red@theroyal.school. Again, if you've got any problems with the My Maths, a screenshot might be really useful, because for different students it generates different questions on this activity. So if you could please write the question or just show me a screenshot, that'd be really handy for being able to help you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.